A netizen shared about a recent article published in the Daily Mail. The title of the piece was New Infections Have Fallen 45% in the US and 30% globally in the past 3 weeks. But experts say vaccine is not the main driver, because only 8% of Americans and 13% people worldwide have received their first dose. The article also mentioned that this data was from the COVID-19 tracking project, and this decline appears to be a global phenomenon. New infections have been falling globally for the past 3 weeks in a row, and hospitalizations have fallen 26% ever since mid-January. According to officials, the drop is likely due to a higher number of people who've had the virus than official counts suggest, as many as 90 million people, and fewer people traveling than did over the winter holidays. The netizen that shared this commented, the main reason behind this seemingly miraculous drop may be Biden's ascendance to power. So clearly, the Biden card is very important. A netizen shared that now that President Trump is no longer in office, CNN coincidentally removed the COVID-19 death toll counter as a permanent fixture on their broadcast. A netizen shared about a recent speech that Biden gave at the State Department. He made some commitments regarding refugees and asylum seekers. He said, quote, "We also face a crisis of more than 80 million displaced people suffering all around the world. The United States' moral leadership on refugee issues was a point of bipartisan consensus for so many decades when I first got here. We shine the light of lamp of liberty on oppressed people. We offer safe havens for those fleeing violence or persecution, and our example pushed other nations to open wide their doors as well. So today, I am approving an executive order to begin the hard work of restoring our refugee admissions program to help meet the unprecedented global need. It's going to take time to rebuild what has been so badly damaged, but that's precisely what we are going to do. This executive order will position us to be able to raise the refugee admissions back up to 125,000 persons for the first full fiscal year of the Biden-Harris administration. And I'm directing the State Department to consult with Congress about making a down payment on that commitment as soon as possible. And to further repair our moral leadership, I'm also issuing a presidential memo to agencies to reinvigorate our leadership on the LGBTQI issues and do it internationally. You know, we will ensure diplomacy and foreign assistance are working to promote the rights of those individuals, included by combating criminalization and protecting LGBTQ refugees and asylum seekers. The netizen that shared about this noted that it's particularly important to note that Biden made all these commitments amid a global pandemic that is still ongoing. A netizen shared that according to a recent article from Fox News, the hotels in San Francisco used to house homeless people may be fully funded by the federal government this year, according to a recent EO signed by Biden. A netizen shared this video clip featuring Margaret Thatcher, well known as the Iron Lady, the first woman and longest-serving former Prime Minister of the UK in the 20th century.
Let us never forget this fundamental truth. The state has no source of...
A netizen shared this tweet, which said that, quote, "Diversity isn't your strength. Together is better. It lowers your wages, marginalizes your culture, increases your crime, occupies your housing, ruins your schools, consumes your taxes, fills your hospitals, restricts your freedoms, endangers your children, and calls you a racist." The netizen added, "It also censors free speech." This netizen also shared about the recent speech that Biden gave at the State Department and specifically his comments about policy toward China and the Chinese Communist Party. He said, quote, "And we will also take on directly the challenges posed by our prosperity, security, and democratic values by our most serious competitor, China. We will confront China's economic abuses, counter its aggressive, coercive action to push back on China's attack on human rights, intellectual property, and global governance." But it's interesting that he also said, quote, "But we are ready to work with Beijing when it's in America's interest to do so. We will compete from a position of strength by building back better at home, working with our allies and partners, renewing our role in international institutions, and reclaiming our credibility and moral authority, much of which has been lost." A netizen shared this recent tweet from Pompeo who said, quote, "Not only has the CCP destroyed millions of American jobs, but they're behind the gates. They're lobbying members of Congress. They're working our school boards and city councils to try and change our way of life. We, along with our allies, must take the China threat seriously. A netizen shared that according to the White House press secretary, the Biden administration will review all the national security measures put in place by former President Donald Trump, including the US-China Phase 1 trade deal signed back in January of 2020. The original comment from the White House press secretary was, quote, "The National Security Team, the newly confirmed Secretary of State, and President Biden are all reviewing all aspects of our national security approach, including certainly our relationship with China." This comment was made back in January 29th, but now the issue of the trade tariffs remains in question. Biden said that he has no plans to immediately remove the tariffs of 25% on about half of the Chinese exports to the US. But after conducting the review, Biden may change his mind. A netizen commented back on January 27th. He said, "It's okay for me to not talk about the presidential election anymore, but I just cannot recognize that this is a fair election, and it's one of the things that make America great." A netizen shared that recently the Labor's International Union of North America said that Biden's Keystone decision will cost 1,000 existing union jobs and 10,000 projected construction jobs, even though on the campaign trail they initially endorsed Biden. A netizen shared that recently the governor of Texas signed an executive order empowering the state to use every tool possible to prevent the Biden administration from killing energy jobs in Texas. He also said that he will strongly support the blue-collar workers who depend on those jobs for a living. A netizen shared that back in January 19th, NBC published an article about a recent poll that it did. The article noted that, according to numbers from the latest national NBC News poll, Joe Biden, as he takes the oath to become the 46th president, he will face an increasingly polarized, pessimistic, and pained nation. The results of this poll showed that more than 7 in 10 voters believe that the country is on the wrong track. Another 7 in 10 believe that the next 4 years will remain politically divided, and a majority say that they are mainly worried and pessimistic about the nation's future. A majority of all the voters don't have high confidence in Biden's goals, policies, and personal characteristics, and a plurality of Republicans aren't inclined to compromise with him.
Child, we will take you in. Child, we will bring you home. You'll be a flower that sees the